Apologetics. Get the book if you're into defending the gospel, and also if you're involved in any type of urban ministry where you see this going around, get informed about it so that you can really counteract it by having a little bit of knowledge before it, because you can't argue against something that you don't know about. Now, so you definitely want to get this. It's about 140 pages. I admonish you guys to get this book. You can order it at the website listed below. You can also look at Vocab Malone on all of the social media networks. Purchase the book. It's a great price.
Man, I hate these devils.
Turn your radio up. Whoa. Radio time. Whoa. You're now listening to Street Apologists. Street Apologists. Street Apologists. Street Apologists. On the radio. Street Apologists. Street Apologists. Street Apologists. Street Apologists. Whoa. On the radio.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Street Apologists Live. I'm your host, Vocab Malone. This is the show where we serve the underserved and look into the overlooked. Make sure that you can hear me properly. How do I sound? Do I sound the right way? Let me know. I'm going to wait for that one. Why? Move up my chair. There we go. All right. Today's Thursday, October 12th, 2023. And what's going on, people? Today, I think will, by definition, be somewhat controversial, but not because I don't think I'm going to say anything crazy or way out there. It's just that, you know, the way things are right now. You know what I'm saying? And hopefully I can bring some clarity and sanity to you in this situation that we are all living through together. Okay. All right. Good. We're sounding good. Okay. Excellent. Yo. Okay. All the way from Idaho. Good to see you. Okay, people, check this out. As you know, lots been going on, and you've heard all kinds of commentary, and I'm an urban apologist, get into theology as well. I did go to school for it, believe it or not. Sometimes I cover current events or news. A lot of times I do evergreen content. But if you studied what I've done, you know, I did stuff related to Islam, and then stuff related to Hebrew Israelism. There's some key main areas. And I believe that the situation happening between Hamas and Israel, I believe that it dovetails into both of those situations. So I think that makes sense, in my view, to talk about it. So let's talk about it. Now, if you notice in the thumbnail, I have a little guy there. He's not a guest today, but what he is he is somebody that I personally listen to and draw great insight from, and I want to encourage you to do the same thing. Since this is not the kind of thing I always do, there's a lot of wacky commentators out there. I'm encouraging everyone to listen to Al Mohler. His website is albertmohler.com, and he does a daily program called The Briefing. It's a brief news podcast through the lens of a Christian worldview, and it's excellent. Right now, when we get into this, please hit that link and subscribe button. Please. Thank you. Okay. Early Saturday morning, we were all shocked. We were all surprised, weren't we? What happened? Thousands of rockets launched into Israel. That's somewhat normal. As you know, the Iron Dome, as it's called, is activated sometimes really even weekly. But this time we had land forces by Hamas coming from the Gaza Strip, some by air. People were even saying they're calling it a parasail attack. And I'm not going to show a video today, but there's videos you can see of Hamas training using some of these vehicles. Very deadly attack. The deadliest attack on the nation of Israel since 50 years ago during something called the Yom Kippur War. Christians may know the Yom Kippur holiday time better as the Day of Atonement. And so this is a brutal attack. Initially, you heard that there's hundreds of hostages. Some of the initial videos I saw were, it looked like mainly younger girls that these guys were grabbing and parading them through the streets, and they were all bloody and, you know, clothes all jacked up and stuff like that. And at first I thought it was just a few things here and there, but then I, you know, like all of us come to realize it's something much more massive than that. And maybe you've seen some of the video where there was a kind of a peace music festival, and, you know, 260 bodies came out of that. You can see video of the concert goers. They see things in the sky. These rockets are going off. These guys land. It's a concerted effort. They start dispersing, and then they cut off them escaping and start mowing them down, these concert goers. Pretty serious, right? So the Gaza Strip is an area that is controlled by Hamas, and this area is controlled by a terrorist organization. And this is an ongoing crisis from the south. But it has potential to be much worse than that, because in the north you have Syria, and there you have Hezbollah. So this is a joint effort. And it is confirmed that in very many ways behind this is Iran. You can see some Wall Street Journal reports on that. If you're going to read a major newspaper from a non-Christian source, the Wall Street Journal is the one that I recommend. It's written at a higher level. It's for adults, intelligent adults. And it is sort of moderately conservative. It doesn't have as bad of a bias or a slant as some of the other papers, especially, my goodness, the USA Today has totally gone downhill. And so I do recommend that if you're going to read something. And thank you, Patriots in Christ. I'm looking over the screen and I see the first super chat of the day. You're helping us go. You're keeping us going. You're helping things like this be able to be possible. And as I look over and see the super chat, I also see my friend, Amakai. It looks like you're saying it, so I'm able to say it. Of course, I knew this about you, but I wasn't going to say it. But I am glad that you are able to say it here. Amakai is someone who lives in the United States. He's a Jewish friend of mine, Israeli, but he's living here, and he's a reservist, and he's volunteering basically to go back to Israel. We had an interview planned, him and I. This is a different gentleman than when I had on Tomer, if you guys remember that. This is a different gentleman, somewhat a younger gentleman. Not able to come on now because he's going to Israel to defend his country. Amakai is not a Christian. He's not a believer. But I hope that you're okay, Amakai, if us Christians pray for you, that you do the right thing, and the Most High God keeps you safe. And I do hope to see you upon your return, and we can get that interview in and have a great discussion between us. That's what I'm hoping. So, the facts are that Iran is behind it with providing equipment, training, and money. Iran is the big power in the region that even has other Middle Eastern countries afraid. Saudi Arabia is trying to normalize relations with Israel, and a key reason to that is because of concern about Iran's activities. They're not the only ones. Same thing with Egypt, UAE, Jordan. These are some of the countries that had somewhat better, although it's always precarious, relationship with Israel. One of the goals, it seems, that Iran has in sort of lobbying Hezbollah into the fray and using Hamas sort of as a first strike is to escalate the conflict, to make Israel a pariah among the nations, because they know that Israel will have to respond, and they know that it will make Israel look bad because of some of the things that she has to do. Because the situation is a very difficult situation. It's a vexing situation, not an easy situation, but at the end of the day, we got to take sides. I to a certain extent, I do believe this. Amakai says, thank you. And Mizret Hashem will have this interview. If I'm freed up in 40 minutes or so, I'll jump on. All right. Well, I'd love to hear from you. And if you're able to jump on, while I'm talking, you could come on and we could discuss this, because you're a reservist. You would offer a unique perspective. Let me know. I can send you a link, because we know how to message each other, and we'll see about that. Would you guys be interested in that? That would change the direction of the program a little bit, but I'd be willing to do that. So there's a huge historical context to the situation, right? Obviously. But when we look at 1948, that is the establishment of the modern state of Israel. Very key event within the 20th century. Obviously, Jewish people having a homeland again. Yes, it was after the Holocaust, but the movement to go there began far before that. So there's a lot to talk about. But just like the sneak attack of the Yom Kippur War was very costly to Israel, so has this one been. That was in 1973. And this is an interesting question. When this first happened, it was like, okay, what's this going to be like? Is this going to be something that is one of these, another skirmish, or is it going to be more significant to that? It looks like it's shaking up to be something more significant than that, because there are frequent skirmishes, obviously, between Israel and Hamas of different varieties, no doubt. What is Hamas? We got to talk a little bit about that. Hamas is an extension of something that came out of Egypt called the Islamic Brotherhood, or the Muslim Brotherhood, rather. You guys know about that, right? Because they, for a while, were in charge of the government of Egypt, right? 87, 88, that's when they come about. And we may even be able to look at their charter. I actually have a PDF. It's an analysis of their charter, their founding documents. And John McCrae got into this a little bit when he did a program with the apostate prophet, and they looked briefly at the charter. I think that Article 7 is especially significant, and you'll see that it's a clear Islamic identity of the Muslim Brotherhood, and by extension, Hamas, and indeed an Islamicist identity. It's not just talking about let's go to the mosque and let's hang out. It's much more significant than that. It's political, clearly. Shout out also to Blue Collar Teamster, all the way from Utah with a super chat. I appreciate what you're doing. Thank you very much. Much love to you. No doubt, no doubt, no doubt. All right. So Hamas cannot be thought of anything else other than a terrorist group. Honestly, they really can't. They basically replaced a group before them called Fatah prior to that. And that group that was before Hamas was a little more secular. Somewhat how the Palestinian Authority there in the West Bank is a little more secular than Hamas is. And in this situation, that's actually better. That's actually good to have more secular, because the alternative is Islamicist. Okay, not what we want. Now, the map has changed around Israel since its founding in 1948. It has changed. When you go back to October of 1973, and now you look what it is now, you'll see differences there. You definitely will, you know. And in 1948, there's a UN charter, Balfour Declaration. The United States was one of the first countries to recognize Israel as being an legitimate nation. That was a big deal. Truman did that. He understood the importance of that. And ever since then, just speaking politically, regardless of your politics, the fact is, on a policy level, internationally, the United States and Israel have had a unique, distinct relationship. Some may call it, to an extent, a bond, perhaps. Now, this is a tenuous time. And there are questions about how Israeli intelligence missed it. Israeli intelligence is one of the most vaunted on the planet. And I understand that, and everyone's going to blame somebody. Ultimately, when you're immediately pointing the blame, I think Hamas is first. There are other, obviously, factors, extenuating factors, no doubt. But, when you got paragliders and parasails, there's not really military installations over there in Gaza. So where are they storing these things? Houses, apartments, underground tunnels, and mosques. And somehow they're able to gather all these armaments, all these rockets, and Israel missed it. That's a future question they'll have to deal with. But for now, Israel is directly responding to what has happened. And Iran is a major force over there. They are destabilizing the region, and there's even a certain sense in which you could see some of the other Islamic republics being glad, almost like, well, I'm glad they're doing it to them, not us, because some of these even Islamic governments can be potential enemies to Iran and Islamicists. And so you have financial support by Iran and all kinds of other things. Now, what's interesting is, even though I said the United States has a special relationship with Israel historically, the United States may have some explaining to do. The timing of this is very interesting, isn't it? What is the timing of this? What was it, a few weeks ago that the Biden administration exchanged hostages that Iran was holding? These are American hostages for $6 billion in Iranian funds. Now, it is true. You could say, well, that was their money, and they promised not to use it for terrorism. All the United States did was unfreeze it. Well, if you unfreeze $6 billion over here, you've got more money over here. What's the word? Money is fungible. I think that's the word. Do you guys understand that? That is something else. The Biden administration tried to play it. Oh, well, these funds will only be used for humanitarian interests to try to make it respectable. That's just a lie. And these funds will be overseen by Qatar. They'll hold Iran accountable. They'll be the intermediary. No, it's essentially a big joke. It's just not gonna happen. And this is bad in every way. A whole mess. And the Wall Street Journal, they ran a story about this, and it said that Iran had been plotting this attack over the course of several weeks, and it almost looked like the timing is coordinated with when this money got freed up. You guys understand that? Now, who's the prime minister over there in Israel? It's Benjamin Netanyahu. He's been the prime minister before. And I'm going to read a quote here, and here's what this is. Eli Marone, he's speaking to the Telegraph there in London, said on Sunday the intelligence services made a serious mistake. Here's what he said. All of Israel is asking itself, where is the IDF? Of course, that's the Israel Defense Force. Where is the police? Where is the security? It's colossal failure. The hierarchy has simply failed with vast consequences. This kind of stuff happens. Obviously, it's happened multiple times. Terrorists are sneaky. So when we put this all together, we have quite the situation. It is important to understand when we talk about, we'll call Gaza and the West Bank, we'll call them together Palestine. We're just looking here at Gaza right now. You have to understand, we don't want to make a one-to-one correlation between Palestine and Hamas or between Hamas and Gaza. However, what was it, 2007, I think, was the year that the people of Gaza elected Hamas as their government. So they do hold some responsibility. And obviously, they're not ignorant to these activities. Now, it's a difficult situation, right? Difficult situation. Similar with Hezbollah. Want to make Hezbollah equal to Lebanon. That's a tragedy in itself when you study the history of Lebanon. It used to be essentially a Christian country, and now they're a persecuted minority. Now, we have to look at Hamas somewhat separately, but you can't entirely separate it out. It is true that there's video of Palestinians celebrating in the street there in Gaza after this happened. And, that's a fact. That's a reality. Nonetheless, when there's a retaliation towards Gaza, it's not right for those involved with the retaliation to be indiscriminate. That's actually a principle of just war theory. It's a principle of discrimination, meaning you specifically discriminate between combatants and non-combatants. You discriminate between men, women, and children, the elderly, the young. You discriminate specifically focusing on warriors. Now, that's a real principle of just war theory that we should hold to and think about and care about and look at. There are some challenges with that. Hamas knows that Israel, in general, has that as a policy. Not that they adhere to Christian just war theory, but I guess what we might say in what are supposed to be civilized nations in the modern age, wanting to follow something like that, are supposed to make a discrimination between combatants and non-combatants. Clearly, Hamas did not do that. In fact, they even seem to target civilians. That's why there's baby carriages riddled with bullet holes and things much worse than that perhaps you have heard about. Now, this is a very serious issue, obviously, but we still have to consider discrimination and retaliation. But it's made difficult by the actions of Hamas. They really do build military targets or targets that are threats inside or underneath things that are not. For example, hospitals and schools. This is a common tactic. Now, why would they do that unless they knew that there would be hesitation on the part of Israel when they retaliate, unless it created a problem for them? And also, they're willing to sacrifice people to get bad PR for Israel. Is this not true? And is what I'm saying wrong? Now, I'm not denying this is a complicated situation at all. I'm not denying this is a complicated situation. It is a complicated situation. But how can anyone look upon the atrocities that were done on Saturday and ongoing? I'll give you an example of one. There's interviews circulating with parents now where they're beside themselves, as you can imagine, and they received a message on their phone from the phone number of a loved one who was hostage. Well, the message was the video of their daughter or son being murdered. The terrorists would have them open it up to mother or father, and then they would take a video and then send the video from the own phone, so the parents would be terrorized by getting a video of their own child being murdered. This is something that's happening, and this stuff's documented because everyone has a cell phone now. Well, what about in the United States? The reaction. The Democratic Socialists of America, the DSA. Not good. Now it's Democrats, but Bernie Sanders is a Vermont senator and independent. He kicks it with them, to say the least. You're not going to find them speaking in defense of Israel. In fact, you'll hear some other things. And it's very disturbing. And this is not the only example in the United States where there's real lack of clarity about this issue. Have you heard about these student groups? I think it's over more than 30, not 30 students, but 30 student groups at Harvard that are standing and standing in solitary, what's the word, with the Palestinian cause, as they're saying it. You could do that under some context. This is certainly a strange context to say something like that, to denounce the victim, basically. But that's what's happening. That is really what's happening in this world, this messed up, crazy world that we are in. Now, I told you that I get some of my information, some of my content from Albert Mohler's The Briefing. You see that I've been looking over the screen beside me here and there while we've been talking. And what am I doing? I'm partially looking at his show notes, because what he does is, after he does a podcast, he does show notes. So if you like what you heard, it's my little vocab distilled version from his show notes. If you don't like what you heard, well, then blame it on Al Mohler. Just kidding, because the thing is, he's good at giving the big picture, and so I appreciate that. And so that's what I am bringing to you today, and encouraging people to subscribe to. Subscribe to The Briefing, listen to it, and I believe that it will help you and benefit you in relationship to this. Now, one thing, and in a second, I'm going to bring some stuff here on the screen. I know right now I'm just talking right at you and just kind of looking at the notes and looking at the camera, but I'm going to bring some stuff here up on the screen in a second here. One of the other things that's happened, besides some of those reactions, there's also been some other students there in Cali that are doing similar things, which is basically denouncing Israel. Bizarre to me. The United States has sent over the USS Gerald R. Ford. Apparently, that's the United States' fanciest aircraft carrier these days, the most technologically advanced. I think it's the largest, perhaps. Sent it right over there into the Eastern Mediterranean. Obviously, that's a signal. It's obviously a signal, right? And it's an important signal, I think. And coming back to other American reactions, some of the people like AOC, they're calling for a ceasefire. What does that mean? So there is a massive attack that's happened. There's hostages. Who knows who's alive and who's not? And then you say ceasefire? That is just basically saying, Israel, you can't retaliate. Israel, you can't go get those hostages. Israel, you can't take out the threat. Isn't that just what that's saying? If this happens and it's a sneak attack, there's not a state of war declared by Israel on Hamas or Gaza or anything like that. Now there is. So obviously there is not great relations between the two powers. That's a whole complicated issue. I don't deny that. But they weren't in a state of war. Now someone will say, well, they were. Well, officially Israel had not. Now they are. So you know the difference of what one looks like, because they're sending in ground troops now. This is very serious. It's not going to be over in a matter of days. So for AOC and the DSA to say, we need a ceasefire, they're just saying, don't do anything. Nations have a right, not just a right. I believe when you read the scripture in Romans, they actually have a responsibility to protect their citizens. So this is basically saying to abandon that responsibility, to neglect that responsibility, not to act on that responsibility. They do have that responsibility. Now, even though you've got some of the DSA saying, hey, we need a ceasefire, we do got to commend President Joe Biden, at least on one thing, I think. Why is that? He has said it is outright, undeniable evil. He has been willing to say that. That's good. Here's what he said. That this bloodthirstiness, quote, brings to mind the worst of the worst rampages of ISIS. And then when he was talking about his conversation with Benjamin Netanyahu, here's what Biden said, quote, we also discussed how democracies like Israel and the United States are stronger and more secure when we act according to the rule of law. Now, Al Mohler points out that, that Hamas is not interested in the rule of law, right? That's not what they're doing. They're killing civilians. Now, someone's going to say, well, Israel's aerial bombardment, there will be civilians that will die. That is true, and that is tragic. That's why this whole thing is a mess. But you have to ask yourself, what choice does Israel have? Israel is a nuclear power. There's all kinds of things they could do. Now, obviously, there's certain things they couldn't do. They're also right next to them. But there's all kinds of things they could do that would essentially just wipe Gaza out 100%. They're sort of softening it up, aerial bombardment, and sending troops in. And part of the reason, is my understanding, is so they can apply the principle of discrimination, going after who they're supposed to go after, but not everybody. Now, are there rogue soldiers? Yes, and those kinds of things happen in war, and it's tragic and it's not okay. But it's usually understood to be an outrage when that happens, not something to be celebrated. Videos I saw from the Hamas side where you had young girls who were who captured by terrorists, and their bodies may have been lifeless. You don't know. They were half clothed. It was half clothed. It's pretty clear they had been raped, and they're in the truck, and these guys are just sitting on top of them, and their limbs are all bent out of shape. And there's teenagers that, while the truck is pulling away, sort of at the cost, at a risk of their own safety, there's these teenagers and younger men jumping over the edge of the truck to spit into the truck, to spit on the dead or dying girl's body. And you just watch it and you're like, what is this? And obviously it's all accompanied by really out of control shouts of Allahu Akbar. Sort of just pure emotion, right? Ali is with us today, and I do thank you for the super chat. He says, Arab Christian brother here, free Palestine. Well, if you are indeed an Arab Christian brother, then I can give you all the benefit of the doubt and all the love that a fellow brother in the Lord deserves and is owed, no doubt about that. Free Palestine, could you explain to me what you mean by that, though? And also, under the situation, help me understand if that sentiment in the current situation is a good example of loving your neighbor as yourself, as a fellow Christian brother. Just help me understand where you're coming from in this situation. President also said that this is a human tragedy, an atrocity on an appalling scale. Human tragedy is probably not the best word. Atrocity on an appalling scale is, though, because tragedy doesn't really imply, as it should, moral responsibility. Natural evil could be a tragedy. Now, what else did Biden say? He said, let me say again to any country, any organization, anyone thinking of taking advantage of this situation, I have one word: don't. And I hope Biden means that. That's a good message. I think so. But what's going to happen? We can't, because obviously some people are going to want to take advantage of the situation. I think we all know that, don't we? Yeah, don't we? Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's going to be people who are definitely going to want to take advantage of the situation. Aren't they? Yeah. Now, let me show you here what I've been looking at through these various briefing transcripts, and I've been telling people what I've been doing there, and that's why I shared that on the page here. I'm not going to be able to answer all these questions, but thank you to everyone who's up in here and commenting and all that. Let me see here. We got some great moderators. Shout out to all the moderators. Okay, so let me share my screen here, and I want to show you this, because what I want to do is not just tell you my little opinion and say you can't get this anywhere else. You can get this somewhere else. Now, it's balanced opinions in this, especially from a Christian worldview, do seem to be rare. But I want to give you resources, okay? You can still hear me. I switched screens. Okay, let's take a look at some things here together. Okay, let me do this here. Let me see if I can make this happen. I'm on the website that I want you to subscribe to this podcast. That's what I'm asking you to do, because I believe it'll greatly benefit you. Let me just let me work this a little bit. So, sometimes I got to rearrange things in the moment. I kind of have it set up, but then I got to rearrange it there. I'm gonna have to rearrange that again later. Okay, so there's a little bit of personality. All right, so we've got that going on. Okay, good. Okay, now let me see here. AlbertMohler.com. Who is Albert Mohler? Albert Mohler is a Reformed Baptist in the Southern Baptist Convention. So he's SBC, but he's a Calvinist. He is the president of the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky. And he came in when it was going liberal, and he really cleaned shop. And I commend him for that. And he does great, fantastic work. And he keeps me sane in a way. I can't be a news junkie where I'm tracking down everything. I encourage you not to be like that too. You will drive yourself crazy if you do that, don't you think? I think you will absolutely drive yourself crazy. So I think you need to be really careful about where you get your news from. And don't just go to what comes to you on the algorithm or whatever conservatives like. Because a lot of conservatives don't have a fully biblical worldview. And some of the news you guys like and are interested in is not even important news. The reason why I check out Al Mohler is because he curates the news and then gives analysis to it. And it's 5 days a week, about 20 minutes. And there's really nothing else like it. And I think once you start listening, you'll find yourself way more informed and much more intelligent about these matters. I can't sing his praises enough and what he does on the briefing. So here's the website. Okay, we're going to go down here and look. This is Boyce College and Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, because he also has an undergrad school, not just the seminary there. So you can download the MP3, or you can listen to little sections here, right here. This one is 25 minutes long. This is from today's. Okay, let me make it a little bit bigger. Okay, so it's divided into 4 parts. And the crazy thing is, he does this off the cuff. So he talks about 4 things here. He talks about natural evil. There's a big earthquake in Afghanistan. A lot of us hadn't heard about that because of what's been going on in Israel. He talks about drum circles in relationship to National Coming Out Day. He talks about the new Speaker of the House for the Republicans. But here is part 2. That is the part we'll briefly look at here. And because I'm trying to show you the way this works. And then the cool thing is the transcript's right there as well. See? So he talks a little bit about what I've already mentioned, which is Harvard is doing these statements where they're supporting Hamas. And Wall Street Journal has an article on it with J.J. Kimchi, and here's what it says. But real quick first, I do see White Lily in the super chat. Here's my jizya. You deserve it. I don't understand what Hamas thought was going to happen, but they think Israel was going to sit on their hands and not retaliate. Thank you for paying your jizya, first of all. Shout out to you on that. Second of all, it's a bit interesting, isn't it? You know, Lily, sin makes us irrational, and I think there's a real element to that. The noetic effects of sin, it makes human beings irrational. So some of it, I think, is decidedly irrational, the attack, because what did they think was going to happen? But also, we know that Iran being behind it has a goal for a much larger conflict, as does Hamas. Hamas could never conquer Israel on its own. But hypothetically, with certain other Arab and Muslim powers involved, Hamas maybe could. And that's where part of Hamas' stated goal to push Israel into the sea could come about. What it means is the people are exterminated off the land. They're not there. It's not a 2-state solution in their mind. And I think that's what it is. They're willing to sacrifice a lot to get that. That's what I think. So here's the Wall Street Journal article. It's called Harvard Shrugs at Jew Hatred, and Al Mohler covers it. And let's look a little bit here at the article. I'm going to read from this part. So this is from Al Mohler, the briefing. And by the way, shout out to Santiago for giving me this hat. You know who you are, Santiago, my man at church. Goes perfect with this old shirt. This is what I dress like when I want to look like I'm out of an extra from a Bronx Tale. Yeah. Hamas's attack on Israel was a small-scale Holocaust, a moment no Jew alive with the tiniest speck of communal feeling will ever forget as a Jewish student, writes this author. I was similarly chilled by the reactions at Harvard. The university's palette, now this is Mohler speaking, okay, so you see where the quotes are and where they're not. The university's Palestine solidarity groups, identified here as a collection of some 30 student groups, quote, issued a statement exculpating the terrorists for their acts of murder, rape, kidnapping, and mayhem. The statement included these words: "We, the undersigned student organizations, hold the Israeli regime entirely responsible for all of the unfolding violence." Isn't that a shocking statement? Do we understand what Harvard is? Yeah, I'm getting a little bit livid here. Harvard is an Ivy League institution. These are vaunted institutions within American history. And I might add they originally founded to glorify God. Look at the founding of Harvard. You'd be shocked compared to what you see now. And these are people who have already achieved in life. Most of them probably have been around elites a lot of their life. And they're going to go on and become elites of our society in most cases. And they're saying we hold the Israeli regime entirely responsible for all the unfolding violence. Talk about blaming the victim. The signatories groups such as the Harvard Islamic Society and the Harvard Law School Justice for Palestine group have made clear that they stand shoulder to shoulder with this resistance, put in quotation marks. In what way is a baby, an old woman, a child? How are they resisting? How are they oppressing? Now, I know someone's going to say, Vocab, you don't understand. Communal guilt and society. Yeah, I know someone's going to talk about that. There's instances here where they came into some of these villages, Hamas, during the Saturday thing, where almost 1,000 people died, according to the numbers. And there's instances where you would have grandmother, mother, and daughter together, and they're gunned down in an instant. 3 generations wiped out. Michael Brown talked about this. He's been covering this, as you can imagine. Ask Dr. Brown. Check out his stuff, Line of Fire. The author then says, rightly, this is the Wall Street Journal article, fashionable doublespeak for those feverishly working to wipe Jews off the face of the earth, end quote. Now, this report also tells us this is not a problem merely at Harvard University. We're told that some 50 student organizations at the University of California, Berkeley, also declared what they described as their, quote, unwavering support for the resistance in Gaza. I'm going to skip some of this, but my goodness. Now, here is the author. Not only have our fellow students failed to condemn this proto-genocide, they've justified it, celebrated it. The authors and signatories of the statement, men and women with whom we shared dormitories and libraries, have exposed themselves as worse than common anti-Semites. They're enthusiastic proponents of our slaughter, a vanguard of apologists for those who seek the extermination of the Jewish people. Isn't that right? Dr. Summers, you see he's an important guy, former U.S. Secretary of Treasury. In nearly 50 years of Harvard affiliation, I've never been as disillusioned and alienated as I am today, saying this has allowed Harvard to appear at best neutral toward acts of terror against the Jewish state of Israel. A lot more to talk about here, a lot of words, and there's so much to say and so much to consider, but we're going to stop there. Now I want to compare that to an evangelical statement. A lot of this program I want to talk about not just what's happened, but Christian reaction, evangelical reaction. And shout out to everyone in the live chat. I just can't get to all these comments right now. I see so many comments. If you give a super chat, and I'm not trying to just do that, but in a show like this, a lot of talk. Be respectful. We'll be all right. We'll get through it. And I will try to get to you. But let's take a look here. This is from the ERLC. Now, I'm not a Southern Baptist. I've never been a Southern Baptist. My grandmother, sometime back in the day, was affiliated with Southern Baptists. And my mom, for some time, being her daughter, was affiliated with the Southern Baptists sometime during their life. And this is, I think, we'll say in the 70s, I think. the SBC, Southern Baptist Convention, is the biggest evangelical Protestant denomination in the United States of America. Not the only one or anything like that, and they make plenty of mistakes. But it's significant because of the size of the group. So we're taking a look at some of the stuff. And, of course, I'm talking about Al Mohler stuff. He's in that, right? ERLC is the ethics. Wait, hold on. Now I forgot what it is. Hold on. Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission. And so they make statements on things like this. So here's a statement they've made. This is on October 11th. So this is where a leading body of Protestant Christian Americans fall on the issue. And I want to read it here. I think this is important. And tell me if you agree with this. Are you guys going to agree with this? What are you guys going to think of this? Let's take a look at this, okay, together here. This is part of the Christian reaction. In the wake of the evil and indefensible atrocities now committed against the people of Israel by Hamas, we, the undersigned, unequivocally condemn the violence against the vulnerable, fully support Israel's right and duty to defend itself against further attack, and urgently call all Christians to pray for the salvation and peace of the people of Israel and Palestine. We'll stop right there. First of all, that's a fire opening statement, first of all. I don't even care right now. That statement right there is straight fire. Shout out to my man, Dr. Bob, one of the newest mods in the house. Shalom, Vocab. Good to be back. Lots of work these days. Thanks for doing the stream, brother. Desperate need for the gospel in these times. Thank you. I appreciate that. For real. Good guy, Dr. Bob. He's the guy that reads Philip Schaff more than anyone I know. A true modern-day church historian you are, my friend. I always learn something about church history when we have a conversation. Thank you for the super chat. Now, look at this statement right here. I'm going to show you guys something. This is fire right here. Fully support Israel's right and duty to defend itself against further attack. Now, look. It's weird. Some of the world almost found Israel, and let's say Jewish people, more morally attractive when they were victims. What I mean is, during the Holocaust, Israel's great crime since the founding of the modern state appears to be that they always win. And when I say always, it doesn't mean that Israelis don't die. It doesn't mean they don't have terrible things happen. It doesn't mean they don't have failures. It doesn't mean they don't make mistakes. It doesn't mean I'm not, obviously no one's saying that. But in the big conflict, at the end of the day, they come away the victor. And it's almost like to some, it makes them less morally attractive. That's the word I'm going to use. And that's the sign Dr. Bob's super chat, and which I greatly appreciate. You get a little triangle sound there too. So here, Israel is going to retaliate, which they have a right and duty to do. And it's as if, you got people over there in the DSA saying ceasefire, as if Israel's not supposed to. What is Israel supposed to do? Yeah, it's messy. It's not good. But it's like, what are they supposed to do in this very untenable situation? What are they supposed to do? Yeah. Now, look, urgently call all Christians to pray. Christians pray, for real. But I like this because it's not just for the peace. It's for the salvation and peace of the people of Israel and Palestine. For all of them. Guys, there's going to be a lot of Palestinians hurting right now. There already are. There's going to be Christians caught up in this nonsense. There already are. This is not something that any of us should relish or be happy about is happening. We must understand that. We need to pray for the peace and salvation of both Israel and Palestine. I like this statement. While our theological perspectives on Israel and the church may vary, that's important. Guys, there's disagreement about the relationship of Israel in the Old Testament till now the church. I was just reading a great book put out by Brodman Holman, and by the way, this is a Southern Baptist publisher, edited by Chad Brand, I believe. And I was reading the chapter on progressive covenantalism perspective, and it's in disagreement with progressive dispensationalists and also with covenantal guys and some others, whatever. And then they interact with their positions. Good stuff. But look, Christians of all types, from Kojic to Assemblies of God to PCA to AME Zion, we have different perspectives about some of these things, even with our own denomination sometimes. I think we got to allow each other that. I don't like when people blame, oh, this is because of, certain theological positions, like they would co-sign what Hamas did. As Christians, I'm saying. So we may vary. Can you allow people to have some variance right now? Because I'm a fulfillment guy. I'm not a dispensationalist of any type. But I stand by, yes, man, there's so much to say here. It's like every word you say, someone's going to say, what about this? So let me not say what I was going to say. Hey, shout out to Faithful Theology in the house. I think we're working on setting up an interview on your channel. And he says, thank you, Vocab, for agreeing to have convo with me on Unitarianism. Appreciate you. Yeah, you know who else you really need to get, though, is, you've already had Anthony Rogers, haven't you? I was going to say, yeah, you mentioned that, I think. But thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it greatly. But look, I think we can have some unity and say this is unequivocally wrong. Okay, we can be unified in that. And I think we need to have some Christian unity and being nice to each other about those issues at all times, not just right now, but at all times. While our theological perspectives on Israel and the church may vary, we are unified in calling attacks against Jewish people especially troubling, as they have been often targeted by their neighbors since God called them as his people in the days of Abraham, Genesis 12, 1-3. Since the inception of the modern state of Israel in 1948, Israel has faced numerous attacks, incursions, and violations of its national sovereignty. The Jewish people have long endured genocidal attempts to eradicate them and to destroy the Jewish state. These anti-Semitic, deadly ideologies and terrorist actions must be opposed. And we haven't even got into really being able to discuss, I briefly discussed it, the underlying problem, or a key underlying problem, is Islam. It's just a fact. Israel stands as a rare example of democracy in a region dominated by authoritarian regimes. We already know Israel's not perfect, but it is a fledgling democracy. And Christians might get spit on there sometimes. And I'm not saying that's okay. But if you notice, that's routinely disavowed by the authorities. And a lot of times when you see Christians being mistreated by ultra-right, ultra-Orthodox, a lot of times it's the police who help them. And being spit on is not good, but it's different than being murdered because you don't say that Muhammad is a prophet, like what happens to you in countries with blasphemy laws. This is a serious thing. I'm not minimizing it, but it's not apples and apples, people. Shout out to Jay Fry for the super chat. You guys are really putting it down today, and I have great appreciation to you for that. Thank you very much. This helps keep it going. That's one of the problems in this, is there's a lot of equivocation. People making things apples when they're oranges. You know what I mean? Don't do that. Got to have clear thinking, not just on a logical level, but also on a moral level, on an ethical plane. And that's, again, why I'm encouraging you people to check out Al Mohler and his work. He does great work. Israel is a democracy in the region. And Netanyahu, back in a day, spoke to a group of evangelicals and said, I know him amongst friends right now. I know him amongst friends. This is the first time he was elected back in, 98 or something? They know that. Thank you, Jay Fry. And also, I'll get to the next super chat. I see the next super chat. I'll give you a thanks in a second, just a minute here. The tragic events of October 7th further underscore the importance of democracy in our world and stand as a sober reminder that supporting Israel's right to exist is both urgent and needed. So you can be like me, and some of you may not agree with this, someone who is somewhat agnostic on the question of 1948. I know I don't... hold on. I got to sneeze. Okay, I think I'm going to be all right. Okay, water will work. I'm somewhat agnostic on the question of 1948, and yet I thoroughly stand with Israel's right to exist and to defend herself, okay? And as a pragmatic political consideration, it makes sense as a citizen of this country to support a country that we have better relationships with. I'm speaking now as an American citizen, and that you can be a Christian and be somewhat protected in compared to the region as a whole, and a country that is at least trying to have some semblance of a democracy. Thank you very much, Christ Tabit, for the super chat. The way for violence to end is for Hamas to surrender. We should remember the remnant Israel is the only nation God ever made a covenant with. I do agree. It'd be great if Hamas would surrender. But you and I both know that probably isn't happening anytime soon, is it? But thank you very much. In keeping with the Christian just war tradition, now this is a whole discussion. Just war, really fleshed out by Augustine, if I'm not mistaken, in the beginnings of it, and later added on. And it's a key element to our intellectual tradition about understanding these matters of trying to apply biblical principles to a reality in this world, which is war. We also affirm the legitimacy of Israel's right to respond against those who have initiated these attacks, as Romans 13 grants the government the power to bear the sword against those who commit such evil acts against innocent life. And that's not only within its borders, but also outside of its borders. Furthermore, we recognize the dignity and personhood of all persons living in the Middle East and affirm God's love for them as well as his offer of salvation through Jesus Christ to all people. And, you know, some of the Jewish people won't like that. But sorry, guys, you don't get our support of prayers and all of that without us also hoping you, showing love to you by hoping that you know Jesus Christ as Messiah. That's just who we are. But we're not going to force you to do it. But doesn't mean we're not going to try to be winsome and compelling through truth, you know? We also recognize the difficult ministry of Jewish and Palestinian believers who labor for the gospel. We pray for their protection and for God's blessing on their gospel ministry. Good. That's good, by the way, because there's people over there, and I'm going to share a book with you real quick. It's called Come, Let Us Reason Together, The Unity of Jews and Gentiles in the Church, Baruch Mahaz. I did a conference with him one time in Tallahassee, Florida. This is put out by PNR. And he is a pastor of Grace and Truth Congregation there by Tel Aviv. Been there for 33 years. Field leader for Christian Witness to Israel. Senior editor of Modern Hebrew Bible. Co-editor of the Annotated Hebrew New Testament. Founder, former co-editor of Mishkan, an international theological forum on Jewish evangelism. And this man has a real eye towards the Palestinians and the Israelis together. And this is a beautiful book talking about that. And so this is exactly the kind of thing they're talking about. A very intelligent man. I loved meeting him. Very gracious as well. I recommend that book to you. Finally, we call on American policymakers to use their power to take all forms of terrorism seriously and call governments and civil authorities to confront evil work to prevent future attacks so that the innocent and vulnerable will be protected. May God bring peace to the Middle East. So this is a statement that can be found on erlc.com, and you see who's signing it, right? Yes, it's pastors, but it's also, and there's Al Mohler, but it's also other folks, you know, seminary presidents. This is quite a few people. You might recognize some of these names. Some you won't see. Some of these are scholars. Darrell Bach. Really a nice guy, by the way. Real smart guy, too. Tony Evans is here. You see? You guys know Tony Evans? So this is very fascinating. Julio Guarneri. I didn't say his name right, did I? I'm sorry. Greg Laurie. And going down the list, and so these are people who signed this statement, which is a great statement. Honestly, I don't even see how any Christian could disagree with it. Now, I know they will. I know people will have a problem with it. But I wish you wouldn't. And you know what? You can sign it as well. Right here. I would if I was you. Let me drop the link in the chat. And sign the statement in support of Israel. Here, sign the ERLC. There, I'm going to drop that. I'm going to pin that, okay? All right. Bada boom, bada bing. Shout out to Green Reads for the super chat. Thank you very much, Green Reed's in the house. Green Reed's, what's up? And what do you got to say? Hey. Green Reed's, you say. Oh, Mr. Green Reed's. Oh, you changed your name. Thanks for doing this one, Vocab Malone. Not a pleasant subject, but one that needs to have sensible discussion. Well, I hope it's helpful. I hope it's helping, man, for real. And thank you. Oh, wait, I got that thing going on? Oops. I hate when that happens. I forgot I still had my screen on. Oh, boy. Okay. Well, since we're doing that, let's switch over here. I want to read an article to you. So I got a couple more things I need to talk to you guys about. Here, I'm looking at you. I'm talking to you. I'm bringing up a message that's relevant to this conversation. Just follow me. I'm going to go on a little whirlwind here real quick, okay? Oh, hold on. You know what? Let me just look right at you to do this part. All right. Take a little whirlwind here. All right. Okay. Here we go. No. Okay. This weekend in Phoenix, there's something pretty cool happening called the Creation Mega Conference. I think I have a flyer for it somewhere. I don't know where I put it. I might grab it later. But what's cool about this, it's put on by ICR. That's the Institute for Creation Research. And ICR helped me as a younger man because they put out a lot of materials that were apologetics in nature and deal with issues of science. Now, they are a young earth creation ministry, so some people don't like that about them. But as a younger man, they really helped me because that was one of the key issues that I looked at. I can't find the flyer for the thing I was trying to show you. Sorry. Oh, I just found it. Okay. I did find it. So that wasn't all for naught. So I'm going to be going to this weekend. Listen, if you're in Phoenix, message me on social media. I actually have an extra ticket. I have one extra ticket, and I can get you if you're really going to do it. It's out there at this church, Tri-City Baptist Church. But, you don't need to take advantage of that extra ticket. Just go to icr.org and register at Phoenix 2023. Really good stuff. I'm not going to read all about it now. There's a reason why I'm reading this in relationship to this show. This guy right here, that's Kyle Mann. That's the Babylon Bee editor-in-chief. He's going to be there. I'm going to talk to him. They've interviewed me before on Hebrew Israelism. Well, anyways, they also do something called Not the Bee. It's stuff that you wish was parody, but it's true news. They just put out a report, October 11th, 2023. Christianity Today's magazine staff made significant campaign donations from 2015 to 2022, and every dollar went to Democrats. Christianity Today is a magazine that was founded in part by Billy Graham. Most Christians know who Billy Graham was. He's passed. The neo-evangelicals, that's what they sometimes called them at the time, Carl Henry, Billy Graham, understood that there need to be respectable institutions and media forms of communication and a push for cultural engagement and no longer shying away from intellectualism and academia amongst Christians in America. Christianity Today was part of that. It was considered the flagship of American Protestantism or Protestant evangelicalism. And when I was younger, my pops actually subscribed to Christianity Today. And I'm the kind of kid that would just read stuff laying around. So I've read a lot of Christianity Today. And then later on, I got interested into it sort of on my own, and I subscribed to it for a while. And I would go look at it when I would go to Barnes & Noble, and it would often be there in the rack and stuff like that. Well, Christianity Today used to be a very kind of middle mainstream Christian evangelical thing, some conservative leanings, but really good stuff. Not anymore. They've totally lost the plot. And their staff for the past 7 years, now we understand, has only donated to one side of the aisle. They're on a certain side now, and it's going to show up in their reporting. And you can see this from the Daily Wire brought this out, and it's it includes the CEO. 73 separate political donations. Every single dollar went to the Dems. that's shocking to me. And I think we need to abandon Christianity today, punish them with your dollars. Don't read their stuff. Don't click on their stuff. And the reason why I say all that is to say this. Now, coming back to the issue, is the alternative is World. It's much more global in its focus, and it is just an amazing magazine. And stop getting all your stuff from secular news sources. Go over to World. Between Albert Mohler, The Briefing, and World, you will be sitting pretty. And so now we transition to looking at an article in World that Albert Mohler wrote. The best of both worlds here. Sound journalism grounding in facts and biblical truth. The website is WNG.org. I encourage everyone to subscribe to the physical magazine as well as digitally. Get involved and you won't regret it. This is where the good stuff is, because a lot of the sources you guys draw from are either secular and they make you bitter or sort of backwards in some of your thinking regarding these issues, or you listen to dumb Christian stuff that's a lot of conspiracy stuff, frankly, that's not good reporting or it's strictly derivative. That's why you need World. So, Rachel weeps for her children. Israel's fight is our fight as well. Let's read this article by Al Mohler together. You guys ready? Can we handle this? Can we do this? All right, let me stretch this out just a tad. I hope you're still with me, and I appreciate everyone who has been with me so far. Great body of people here. I appreciate you guys a lot. I may cover this again because what I'm thinking about is I might want to do a show that's about what the Hebrew Israelite reaction has been. What would you guys think of that if we did something like that? I feel like that could be an interesting program. I've been considering that. Okay. Thus says the Lord, a voice is heard in Ramah, lamentation and bitter weeping. Rachel is weeping for her children. She refuses to be comforted for her children because they are no more. Jeremiah 31:15. The terrorist attack on Israel started early Saturday morning with a massive barrage of rockets, men riding parasails, and others moving swiftly over Israeli territory. Within hours, thousands of rockets would be launched and hundreds of Israeli citizens would be dead, while others were taken hostage back to Gaza Strip. The massacres were horrifying, with women, children, young people, and the elderly murdered, many in their own homes. The murderers killed one grandmother and then used her own phone to take photos of her body, leaving the phone for the family to find. So that's another thing they did. That's horrific. At least 260 people attending a music festival were massacred, and many were taken hostage. The attack was undertaken by Hamas, a well-known Islamist terror organization that also functioned as the governing power in Gaza. Just as a major Jewish holiday was about to end, Israel found itself at war with Hamas. I'll make this a little bit bigger for everybody here. We got a lot of comments on this program. Let me take a look here. We shut to Walsh. Everyone subscribe to Walsh. How you doing, Ham Sunshine? You know I got love for you, Nate. Who else is in here? Just give me a second. I like to check you guys out, see what you're doing over here. David Collins, how you doing? It's going to be... okay. Now, taking a look at this here. Some of the comments perplex me a bit, but I'm trying to just keep on going here. Some of you guys are strange. You know that? Yeah. The carnage in Israel produced dancing in the streets of Gaza, and Hamas called upon fellow Islamic terror organizations like Hezbollah and Lebanon to join the attack, hoping to put Israel between one terrorist force to the north and another to the south. The United States and other allies announced solidarity with Israel, and Israel declared a state of war. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke for his nation in pledging to avenge the massacre and put an end to Hamas as an operational force. This will not be a short war, but Israel must win it, and the nation knows it. That's because this is really an existential threat to Israel. Giant questions loom. How could Israel's legendary intelligence services fail to detect a mobilization of this size? How could thousands of rockets and missiles be stored for months in Gaza without detection? Was this not also a massive failure in U.S. military intelligence? What is Iran's involvement? The political repercussions will certainly come, but right now Israel is united in understanding the plain fact that the nation faces an existential threat. And indeed, they are united. Israel was having some shakeups in their government. I don't know if you heard about this, but right now they've got a coalition government that's a unity government, formed a unity government to put those things temporarily behind and deal with this threat immediately. And, the United States is over here not even having a speaker of the House. So we've got a dysfunctional situation here as well that's not good. So, there's a lot of mess, a lot of chaos everywhere. Sadly, Israel has a lot of experience in pulling together against threats to its existence. The Jewish state has no choice but to defend itself over and over again against enemies that want it destroyed and have declared so. We must stand with Israel in its right and responsibility to defend itself against murderous aggression intended to destroy the nation and kill Jewish citizens. A nation will only survive if it sustains courage and determination greater than the threat it faces. Israel knows this truth well. There is every reason to believe that it must translate that truth into actions that put an end to this threat, knowing that even greater threats will come. The lives and liberty of Israel's people are threatened by a genocidal enemy that does not want to see the Jewish state weakened but destroyed. The righteous wrath of Israel is now to be unleashed, and difficult days lie ahead. We pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Americans and others who love liberty and prize human dignity must know that Israel's fight is our fight as well. We share with Israel a few common friends and many common enemies. That is not a coincidence. We are linked by a common history and by common convictions. Americans must take pride in the fact that the United States was the first nation to extend official recognition to Israel when the new nation was founded in 1948. We must stand with Israel now. We must also know that our deepest civilization principles are also threatened by the rise and empowerment of terrorist threats, and that Islamic terrorism, rooted in an explicit and deadly worldview of its own, has declared itself the enemy of those principles and the nations that embody them. Thus, Israel's war is our war too. The cumulative shock, grief, and horror experienced in Israel over the last few days is unspeakable and incalculable. The anger is palpable and justified. The righteous wrath of Israel is now to be unleashed, and difficult days lie ahead. We pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Among the residents in Gaza are Christian believers, trapped in a war started by Hamas and now prosecuted by Israel. We pray for those Christians even as we pray for Israel. Please do, y'all. Some of those believers are also victims of Hamas and its ideology. I firmly believe that Christians bear a special responsibility to the Jewish people, and that our responsibility is extended to the Jewish state of Israel, brought into existence after centuries of genocide against the Jews. I believe that Israel is a providential nation that serves as evidence of God's continued faithfulness to the Jewish people. The very survival of the Jewish people in the face of genocide, pogroms, the Holocaust, and deadly forms of anti-Semitism is evidence of God's promises and providence. The state of Israel's experience with constant enemies is also tragic evidence of the presence of evil in this fallen world. Evil is on full display in the Hamas attack and in their hostage-taking and threats against unarmed Israeli citizens, including mothers and their children. The attack came almost exactly on the 50th anniversary of another surprise attack on Israel, the Yom Kippur War of 1973. That was no coincidence. Israel is again at war, and Israel's fight is our fight as well. What do you guys think? Now, if you look, there's a lot more here. Now, we're not going to get into it, but this shows you how good this website and magazine, it's a physical magazine, I think it comes out twice a month, is good. The evil actions of Hamas, Harvard and Hamas. You see some of these? Israel prepares to launch ground operation in Gaza. More remains recovered from imploded. Okay, so I highly encourage you guys to go to wng.org. What I'm trying to do is to get you to get the resources in your hand where you can have some trusted sources in regards to these matters. We need stuff like this. And don't give, all the secular folks your money. Let's support our brothers and sisters doing good work like Al Mohler and The Briefing and over here at wng.org. Let's do that, please. I ask you. Now, do you guys have any questions or comments for me? I'll try to answer some of them. And I want to ask you a question now. We've looked at a number of things here. I've tried to give you a number of resources because this is obviously going to develop. I'm not going to be always doing programs on this, although I want to ask you a few questions about potential future programs. One is, do you want me to do a program that is focused partially on Hebrew Israelite reaction to this? It's been interesting to say the least, troubling as well. And do you want me to do a program on more details about who Hamas is, specifically looking at their charter? Now, I actually have their charter. I have some documents that we could look at that some right now, but I don't know if we want to extend this into that. I feel like I would like to take some questions from you. I feel like that maybe is one of the best things I could do, and I would be interested in seeing what you guys have to say. Just give me a cue with a question mark at the end. I'll do my best. Do not claim to know everything about this. That's why we want to look at these resources together. But I could do what I can, and hopefully it's helpful. So I'm gonna take a look here right now at some questions. Just give me a second. Okay. Walsh. Let's see, I'm gonna put the comments up here. IUIC Raleigh has one for you should review for sure. It'd be a great vid to expose the hatred. Yeah, okay. Hey, can you send that to me? I know I haven't seen the specific video you're talking about. Send that to me. Shania Zion says, I would be interested in the BHI reaction beside in your chat. Okay, so it sounds like people do want that program to happen. Jay Will says both. So we do want an analysis of who Hamas is and looking at some of the documents that Hamas has created that tell you who they are. Boss L says, do you believe in the rapture and disappearing into thin air? No, I do not. I am not a dispensationalist. I'm not a pre-mill, pre-trib guy. What that means is that I believe Christians go through a time of tribulation with everybody else and indeed experience some of the worst brunt of it because of persecution. And then the Lord comes back, wrecks shop on his enemies, and sets up a government from which he rules and reigns on this earth in real time as believers live in resurrected bodies with him. So I do not believe in that. I'm sharing the verse from Gabriel on the screen. Nicodemus says, some think Israel allowed this invasion. Do you think that theory has merit? Why or why not? I do not think that Israel allowed this invasion. One is I don't find that to be characteristic of what I know of Israel. If maybe you could even accuse them of overreacting to certain things that happen, as they will definitely react strongly to this. And so, even allowing this kind of thing to go down, I don't think so. I imagine there could be some people that will say, oh, yeah, because Israel wants to take control of Gaza. What's going to happen in Gaza is going to be interesting. There are some people who talk about Israel wanting to basically make it part of Egypt or some other nation or something like that. Or Israel essentially take it over and run it. And I could see people being like, oh, well, look, because they've got to eliminate the threat. Otherwise, it's just going to happen again. And so the future is going to be very different than what everything has been now. But I don't think there's any evidence to that. And I don't think that would make any sense either. And speak on the 7-year tribulation? Very briefly. I do believe there's a 7-year tribulation. I believe that we will not know exactly when it begins because there's been lots of tribulation, travail, and turmoil. But we'll have certain signs and that the Lord comes back at the end of that. But the Christians go right through it. David says, apart from prayer, what support do you believe American Christians should render to Israel? Is it the same as other countries under Muslim attack? Why or not? Well, that's a very interesting question, David. I was actually talking about that to a friend today, David. And, you know, you're specifically saying American Christians. I think prayer is key. Kindness and love and concern and compassion to Jewish neighbors here in America, doing what we can, I think, as well, perhaps. And I'm sort of an isolationist, so I have mixed feelings about what America should do. Now, I know you're asking about Christians specifically, but I have mixed feelings even about what America should or shouldn't do. Meaning, I think that, hold on, I'm going to see if this guy can join. Hold on just a second. I'm going to see if he can join. Yeah, but you know, that's an interesting question. I do not have. Hey, man, I just sent you the link. If you're able to come on, can you hear me?
You hear me?
Yeah. I just sent you a link. If you want to jump on for a second.
Yeah, I'll jump on right now. I just got back to the house so I can get on.
Okay, excellent. I'll talk to you then, brother. Okay. Oh wow, this is gonna be cool. We're gonna have a reservist join us. That's pretty cool. Thank you, Walsh, by the way. So, David, your question's a very, very good question. Prayer, kind of solidarity, also with Palestinian Christians, especially. This would be these would be some very difficult questions to have because there's a lot of disagreement, though. I understand that. But it's interesting what you said. Is it the same as other countries under Muslim attack? Yeah, I do think it's very similar. I do think it's very similar. That's like the best question there. Oh, James G's got a question too here. So I'm sorry. I know I didn't really answer your question. It's such a good question. Practically, this is difficult. A lot to figure out here. How should we Christians react to extremists on both sides? One wants to make a parking lot out of another. Well, that needs to be tempered, you know. Just a sheer bloodlust revenge. That's why I talked about just war and the principle of discrimination needing to be applied. And that would include with like right-wing hawk Americans, I guess, who are like speaking that way. That's not a solution. That's not right. It's a very difficult situation, but there has to be a response. I don't see any way around that. But I think that we also have to talk to the other side and say, hey, man, let's get our ducks in a row. All right, I got you on, brother. Listen, I know there's more questions, and thank you for the super chat asking that question, James. But that's a good question, too, because we might have to check people on the right side as well. You know what I'm saying? Because we got to act Christianly about this. Not that it's easy, but we need to do that. Okay, so I'm going to bring up my friend here. Just give me a second. This is very interesting. I didn't know if we were going to be able to do this or not. But I mentioned this earlier that I have a friend who's a reservist, and he's literally on his way. He was on his way today. Things didn't work out, but he's going to be on his way tomorrow. Just give me a second. I got to push a few buttons here, and I'm gonna have you on with me. Just got to push the buttons here. Sometimes a little bit of transition here, so you get your stuff set up while I get my stuff set up. Everyone, don't go anywhere. Don't stick around. You're going to hear from someone who is going over to Israel tomorrow. Do you understand what I'm saying? He's gonna be on here and he's gonna talk with us, which I'm very excited about. And I think we're gonna have a good, important discussion. And all right, okay, let's see here. Is it ready? Okay, there we go. Okay, host plus. Okay, just a second. It's still a little delay. Okay, that looks pretty good. And you know, we've talked, but I'll probably need you to help me to be able to pronounce your name properly once I bring you on. Okay, switching over to this. All right. Be sure to like this video, by the way. Everyone be sure to like this video and be sure also to hit that thumbs up. That's how you like it. Be sure that you subscribe to this channel, please. And be sure that you've also leave comments and that you will leave comments. Wow, this is awesome. Let me see if I can hear you, my friend.
Okay, are you able to hear?
Yes. Can I get you to be a little bit louder? I'm going to try to turn you up as loud as I can on my end, but I don't know if you could get closer to the microphone or something like that. It's a little quiet, but go ahead.
Yeah, I can give it a shot.
All right, yeah, just I guess
work?
enunciate.
You can still see?
Yeah, just enunciate loud and clear. Guys, am I way louder than him? What are our sound levels? Let me know. I'm going to look to you guys in the live chat. So how do I say your name? Because we've only messaged.
Yeah, so it's pronounced Amichai, like Amichai.
Amikai. Okay. Amikai, why do you even listen to this program? How come you started following me and messaging me in the first place? Tell me why.
So when I first got back to the States, living in Seattle area, I would hear about the Black Hebrew Israelites, but I had never met one until I started working with one. And they start, to say like, oh, well, we're brothers at the end of the day. But his implication was he's Jacob and we're Esau, so we're brothers in that right. But, we're a wicked people and we're bad people and we're an imposter. And from there, I went down the rabbit hole. And then I started to meet more as I moved from Washington to Texas, and Texas has a bigger population of the Hebrew Israelites. So I started to find your videos because I wanted to see people who are having dialogue with them to see like what are they, about, and kind of you're the expert in this field.
Well, I appreciate that. And I'm glad you did reach out. And I'm glad that you did make contact. And we've had some great conversations. And you've even told me that you helped me with Hebrew and things like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent. So we had an interview scheduled. You were going to come on. We're doing this because we're going to do a physical face-to-face interview. But now we're going to have to reschedule it. Why is that? Where are you headed? What are you about to do?
So I was, because of everything that happened, Israel called back about 300,000 reservists, but 400,000 had shown up, which just shows, like how much the people are willing to come and protect, because we all have, for lack of a better word, skin in the game. Everybody knows somebody who's been hurt, or somebody that's died, or knows somebody who has this going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I got in contact with the tactical post in New York, and I let them know like my situation. I haven't got a Tzav Shmone yet. Tzav Shmone is like an order to return as a reservist. I haven't got that yet, but I reached out to them because I told them, look, my unit right now, they can't call back everybody because we don't have enough weapons and stuff like that for every one of the soldiers. They told me it doesn't matter, just get here. We'll figure everything out once you're in Israel. So I have the opportunity to return. So it doesn't matter where I go in Israel, as long as I'm able to help in some way.
So your unit was not required to go back.
It's
but
only partial, like only some of the people in my unit were called back.
So, but not you, but you called them and said you're a volunteer, and they said, okay, we're going to get you a plane.
Yeah, exactly
get you a flight.
this. So I may not be with my unit in particular, but I'm going to get in where I fit in, as they say.
Do you know, are you able to say at all what you think you might be involved or doing in general?
So most likely, because as a reservist, my actual service ended about 5 years ago.
Okay.
So most likely, I'll just be guarding over a border or one of the communities in the south. Or if things escalate, that can change, obviously, but I don't know everything.
Wow. So are you able to speak on, you may have more personal or up-close inside information regarding the actual nature of some of the atrocities that have happened. Are you able to share any of that? Because I want people to understand basically how bad this is. I didn't show video today. I'm not going to do that. But if you could share anything to help people understand how serious this is, perhaps?
Yeah, I can discuss. I think you covered a lot of it quite well.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right, thank you.
Completely by surprise. I mean, they breached the border wall. They came from over the wall. They came from everywhere all at once, all in the shadow of 5,000 rockets. And once they got in, it happened to be that there was a Mesibat Teva, like a nature party called a Nova Party, down in the south. And from there, they slaughtered 260 young people. It took hostages, and then they entered into the different communities, slaughtered families entirely. They killed 40 babies. Now, this is where something is like a little bit exaggerated. It wasn't that they found 40 individual babies that were all decapitated. They found multiple that had been. They found multiple elderly people and young people that had been decapitated as well. But they say that most likely that they were killing the children in front of the parents, and then the parents would beg, like, just leave me one child, and then would commence to commit slaughter against the whole family. And
Right.
they took
Purpose.
Holocaust survivors. Most people have seen this picture of the elderly lady, 85 years old. I believe her name was Yafat Adaw. She was taken into Gaza. She's since been, we've since gotten her back, but she was a Holocaust survivor. So if you can imagine, she was taken into captivity, experienced atrocity in her past, in her youth, and then here she is now again.
Yeah, it's pretty tragic, pretty intense, very serious. Do you have family in Israel?
Yeah, I have family in Israel. A few of my cousins are actually studying in yeshiva right now in Jerusalem.
Wow. So you have somewhat of a religious family.
Yeah, I do. I'm
You're
one of the
s-
least religious in my family,
you're one of the least religious in your family.
but I mean, I'm still religious, just not, not Hasidic.
Not Hasidic. Do you have Hasidic family?
Yeah, my family comes from a Chabad background.
Oh, wow.
So, like, my
Okay.
dad's family, they're from Crown Heights.
Oh, okay. Okay. Wow. It's it's amazing that I'm able to actually talk to you, and to think that tomorrow you'll be on a plane, and by
Yeah,
what, probably the Sabbath, you'll be in Israel.
yeah. So I'm getting there. The flight was originally supposed to go out at 3 in the morning, Friday, New York time. But they called me after I got through TSA and they were saying, listen, the plane has been pushed back till 10 p.m. on Friday night. So this is also abnormal that they're grabbing so many people, basically anybody that's willing to get onto the plane, on a Sabbath. But I think that it's in this situation, I think that it's okay to fly on a Sabbath because it's pikuach nefesh. Like it, this can save a life if
To
we can
save a
get over
life.
there.
You know,
So I think,
about 2,000 years ago, there was a rabbi who made an argument that it's okay to do work on a Sabbath if you save a life too.
yeah, exactly.
His name was Yeshua. And
I see.
because a lot of
I
times, if
mean, I
you,
would agree with if you can do anything to save a life, nothing else matters in that moment,
yeah, if you ever, you got a long plane ride ahead of you, maybe you're reading, the Gospel of Matthew, for example, and you'll see that Yeshua had these arguments with the Pharisees, and they would watch him to see if he would perform a miracle on Shabbat. And he did, and they got upset. And very interesting discussions they had about that.
Well, I have a question. Was he performing a miracle to perform a miracle, or was he performing a miracle to save a life? I think that's what the Pharisees were wondering.
Hmm. Uh, the miracles were healing, for example, someone with a withered hand, healing a cripple, um, things of that nature, making the blind have sight, those types of things. So I think they exemplified loving your neighbor as yourself,
Yeah,
and he would make the point, if one of you has an animal that falls into a ditch and it's on Shabbat, you'll retrieve the animal. And he says, how much more should we not do this with the children of Israel as well? But yeah. Well,
I think it's a interesting topic to be explored at a later date when there's less going on.
yeah, well, I hope we are able to talk more about those kinds of things. And I know you said when we come on, you didn't want to necessarily do a deep dive in Christianity. It's not a strong suit, but maybe we can have some private conversations. Other times. Do you have any idea, Amakai, how long you might be gone, or is that just totally up in the air?
Everything is up in the air right now. I mean, just like today, everything became up in the air after I thought everything was, a solid thing. I mean, Bezrat Hashem, it's not going to take so long, but we'll never know. The big thing is, I hope nothing else escalates at this point, because this can't go on. This can't continue. Not like this. Not with the situation in the Gaza Strip. They haven't had any food, water, electricity. I mean, how can they treat their wounded? They have to. Hamas has to say, if we're here to stand and represent the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip, how can you say that when it was your action that caused this? If you didn't attack on Saturday, nothing would happen. You would be living in peace right now. There would be nothing going on. There wouldn't be this war. So hopefully these people can make an uprising to stop, all of this. Because the worst thing would be a ground invasion. And the worst thing also would be continued with the airstrikes for them, because Gaza Strip is about 25 miles. We can't continue.
Yeah, it's not a very large place. And, I've seen some, I believe it's called Gaza City. I've seen some of the video and footage. It's definitely taken a major hit.
Left.
Yeah, there's not a lot left. And from what I've seen, it does look like there's going to be a ground assault.
Yeah, that's what they're gearing up for. But that's mostly, they will go in to weed out the terrorists that are in there. But the dangerous thing is, they don't, if you see Hamas on TV, they're wearing uniforms, this and that, but in real life, in the actual battlefield, they don't wear any sort of uniform.
Right.
So, also, at any point, anybody can radicalize. Somebody you thought was just a harmless civilian can all of a sudden become your enemy in just one moment if you're not paying attention. So it makes it very difficult.
Because that's one of the problems.
I'm sure radical Islam, it's an ideology.
Right.
Anybody can take part of this.
Yeah, because you're not fighting a nation proper at that point. People don't realize, uniforms are actually it's a form of, I don't want to say civility in war, but it helps enable discrimination between combatants and non-combatants as targets. And so ultimately uniforms, they're a good thing, because we should know, this is someone involved directly in the conflict. This is an innocent bystander. You don't target the innocent bystander. But of course, that's exactly what Hamas did. Now, what would you say if someone says, well, yeah, Hamas killed civilians, but the IDF is going to go kill civilians? Have you ever heard someone say that? What do you say in response?
So it's funny you mentioned this. I was actually speaking to my uncle. He's around 85 years old. He lives in New York. And he heard that my plane had gotten canceled, and he wished that I wouldn't have canceled my flight from Phoenix so that they could have picked me up from the airport and spent time with me. But he was telling me in his whole life, because he's lived in New York most of his life, he was telling me, basically, I never once thought about my life as a Jew. I never thought anything of it. Nobody's ever said anything to me. I always thought I was safe and nothing, nobody can touch me. Nobody's also looking to cause problems with me. But he said for the first time, he was at the gym, local gym, and one of the ladies there that's a gym goer came up to him and asked, what your people are doing is atrocious. You guys kept them in a open air prison, for decades now. And now you guys are going to sit here and complain that they're fighting back. So, these topics are coming up. But what people have to understand is this is not an open air prison. That wall wouldn't exist if terrorism didn't exist. If we didn't have to keep Hamas out of Israel, that wall wouldn't be there. Because we give around 20,000 Palestinians the right to come from Gaza into Israel to work, to earn money, to make, for their family a living. That's
You're
not going to
saying
be the
there are
case anymore.
Palestinians who come from Gaza and they work inside of Israel, because it's clear they're not terrorists. It's how they support themselves. And you're saying that's allowed, but there has to be protections from Gaza, and that's why those things are there.
Yeah, because they were doing suicide bombings, and you see what they've done inside of the Gaza Strip. I mean, they have basically their launch pads for the rockets are out of the UNRWA schools, the UN funded hospitals, and stuff like that. But the open air prison, the wall wouldn't be there if it didn't have to be there. If there was safety and we could trust that our neighbors are not a terrorist organization or run by one, a terrorist regime, which the world recognizes them to be, that wall wouldn't be there. But also,
Well, this attack proves what's really going on, of course, right? You
yeah,
know
the
that
world is seeing what it is now. And if they want to say it's an open air prison, do you know who the guards of that open air prison are? It's Hamas. Hamas are the guards. They're the
Yeah.
ones that are keeping people under this occupation. Like, not occupation from Israel, but occupation, like Hamas is occupying the strip.
Yeah, and
And
you know
that's
it's
what's causing
interesting.
the Palestinians issue.
I saw some people say, "Oh, Israel is using this as an excuse to go occupy the Gaza Strip," and some people
No,
would point it out. Well, here's what's interesting, Amakai. Some people pointed out, "Oh, you just kind of gave yourself away because what's a common charge? Israel occupies the Gaza Strip. They're occupiers." It's like, well, wait a minute. Now you're saying they're going to go occupy it. That means before they weren't occupying it. And now, of course, obviously, we know that's not the reason, but we understand what people will say. But I think that's
yeah, of
part of
course.
what my understanding is. Iran, and of course, Hamas wants as well. They do want a larger conflict. They do want Israel to look bad. They do want the support from the West and all that to dry up, as Israel has to do what Israel has to do, because Israel's got to take its own survival seriously first, regardless of what any other country thinks. And they know that some people won't have the stomach for that. So I think they are hoping for a larger conflict. We are praying there's not a larger conflict, not an escalation. And I know that you would as well, just like we also pray for your safe return.
Yeah. I don't want any escalation, obviously, and I don't want the ground troops to go in there. Now, as far as talks of like the Gaza Strip hadn't been occupied, they will make that argument about the whole land of Israel because they say that we are, Zionist settlers,
Right.
colonialism, etc., etc. It's not true. But Gaza, it was once a Jewish territory. It was called Gush Katif. It was a Jewish settlement, but we withdrew from there in exchange for
2005,
land
right?
for peace, which doesn't work, as we know. And Hamas took control of there in, I believe, 2007 or 6. I could be wrong, but we withdrew in 2005. They came in and started ruling.
Yeah, I remember seeing the videos of them actually pulling Jewish residents out of their houses to have to leave the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, yeah. That's what happened. Now the charge today that we're going in there to then now occupy Gaza again, I don't think anybody wants that because it's clear that that can't work. We can't have any more like, okay, we're going to take this and say like, all right, well, you guys can continue to live here, but we're going to rule over you. Like, this is not going to work. I'm not sure what the solution is, but I know that things will never be the same. They will never be as they were.
Yeah, I agree. Because it's too great of a threat. It's been proved to be that. It's going to be, things will be different. If people could know one thing about the IDF that you'd want them to know as someone who's a reservist, what would you want them to know? Especially maybe American Christians. What would you want them to know?
That Israel, it's a defense force. That's why it's called the Israeli Defense Forces. It's also that in Hebrew, it's Tzva Hagana Israel.
How do you say that again?
We are not an aggressor. What was that?
How'd you say that?
Tzva Hagana Israel.
That's how you say it in Hebrew?
Like, yeah. So it's not. It is an army, but it's not really. Its creation was that it's a defending force. It's not an aggressor. It's not like we're going in and we're attacking people left and right and saying like how traditional armies would work. But I would say people should know that in the Israeli army, you've got multiple nationalities, ethnic groups. You've got Christians, you've got Drusim, you've got Muslims, you've got Jews, you've got everybody, and it's represent the whole nation. You even have, and this is gonna be like maybe shocking to some of the viewers, you even have Hebrew Israelites inside of the army
Oh, you're talking
from the
about the folks
African
from
Hebrews.
Damona.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
even have them in there
because they've become citizens of Israel, and
through the service.
there's a number. Have you ever met Hebrew Israelites in the IDF?
One moment.
Your sound went out there for a second.
Yeah, sorry about that. Can you
Have
hear
you
me
met
now?
any, or do you know of any particularly?
I've met a few, but I didn't know what they were. I just thought it was odd because like they're not Ethiopian. I knew that,
Right.
but I had a friend, she served in the Air Force. One of her best friends came from that community. So I don't know. At the time, I didn't know really what they were and what it
Right.
was about. Obviously, I know the history now more of the African Hebrew Israelites in Dimona. I know much more about it now. And today they're much different than they were when they first had come over. I'll
Correct.
say that.
Yes.
They
They've
weren't always the village of peace.
they've integrated, and when I've looked out across the landscape and seen Hebrew Israelite reactions to what's happening, the only Hebrew Israelite of any sort that I saw who came out in support of Israel was Amari Stoudemire. And he's been
Oh yeah,
associated. Yeah, he's been associated. Obviously, he's from America, but he's been a supporter of the Damona community and things like that. And he's the only one, though. I may do a program on reactions. Most of the reactions are good. They're getting what they deserve. That's because we're not over there. You know, even in the
yeah,
live chat, I knew there'd be negative comments. They're not as bad as they could be, but there's, of course, negative comments. But, you know, Hebrew Israelites, this is the real life. In real life, they are actually in Israel and they're actually being attacked. And there is anti-Semitism that's embedded within the Quran and Islam. And that's the sources that Hamas draws from. And that's the real life. You know, you Hebrew Israelites in the States, you think you're part of the conversation and that, you know, it's a fantasy. This is really what's happening, though. This is the real thing of what it looks like to be an Israeli and to have someone whose religion has your destruction as part of the tenets of it, at least in key versions of it. I'm speaking about Islam, and that's essentially what Hamas is. You know, it's no joke. Now, I know you're a reservist, a soldier, not necessarily a politician or a geopolitical historian, but do you know much about the Hezbollah element?
yes.
And can you tell us a little about Hezbollah and what's going on there? Because I heard help me out.
So Hezbollah is in the south of Lebanon. It's not it's a terrorist regime, but it's much more an army. It has structure. They have much better funding. Their soldiers have a lot more experience in combat because most of them were fighting in Syria for ISIS. So they are also heavily backed by Iran, just like Hamas. It's a proxy. Um, we've been getting the few exchanges on our northern border with Hezbollah. I believe we've killed a few of their fighters as well. But as back as 2017, I know visiting up in the north, the kibbutzim that are up there, people are saying that they can hear like tunneling under the ground. So I mean,
Really?
for a long time, just like how Gaza, there's tunnels that come under into Israel. In the north, I think we have the same issue. So the big fear is that they'll take advantage of this situation with all of our ground troops headed toward Gaza and the West Bank, that they'll flank from the front, and they're much better funded and they're much more experienced.
So Hezbollah
But
is more formidable than
yes,
Hamas. Hamas is sort of kind of like a rag-to-ag operation. Hezbollah is more of a formally structured.
structured. It's a
Uh,
structured army.
mm,
Hezbollah, because Lebanon in its inception was supposed to be a Christian nation, an
it
Arab Christian
was.
nation.
It was. The Christians over there allowed Islam to flourish in their midst, and next thing they knew, they were persecuted minorities.
Yeah.
Lebanon was the last remaining Christian country in the Middle East. People forget that whole part of the world, not every single country, but large chunks of that part of the world were Christian, because that's where Christianity began. You look at Turkey, you look at the history of so many of these countries from North Africa and the Middle East, obviously Syria, and you see Christianity, and it's all changed because of the incursions of Islam. And, you know, that's a real thing. And here it's interesting. You'll see Sunni and Shia, because people should understand Iran is Shia. You'll see them joining together, uniting in their hatred and dislike for Israel, even though they have strong disagreements of themselves. Left to their own devices, they probably fight each other. But as long as Israel's around, they'll fight Israel.
Yeah, they'll fight the common enemy until there's no common enemy.
So, Hezbollah and Hamas, are there any other potential threats you're aware of, or you think that...
So, inside of the Gaza Strip, there exists also Islamic Jihad, and then I think the Muslim Brotherhood as well. But, I mean, there's even been reports now that there's videos of the Hamas fighters even speaking Farsi.
Oh, really?
So, I mean, we know a lot of them were trained by Iran, but maybe potentially some of them were Iranian themselves. And that could be why this attack was so much different, because they're much more trained and structured as opposed to what we were used to in the past.
Have you seen, speaking of the training, it's a video that's been around that shows Hamas practicing with those, you know, they got the like little fans on the back.
Yeah.
And then has that something that was known to be a problem, or is this the first time that's been used in that way? Those like paracells and all that?
That's the first time it's been used in that way, and that's why a lot of people are thinking there was no way they trained with that inside of Gaza. More than likely, they were trained outside of there.
Man, there's a lot to this, and it's tough because it's true. There's restrictions on the Gaza Strip by Israel, but we have to ask ourselves, what else can Israel do? So it's a very vexing, untenable, difficult, complicated situation. But people have to understand what else can they do? Because they have to limit this threat. And now, what else can they do? How else can Israel act? It's like a lose-lose. Israel defends itself, and the world says it's bad, or da-da-da. But what else can Israel do? You know, I guarantee Americans, almost everybody watching this, and regardless of what country you're in, if you had someone come across your border and slaughter 1,000 of your citizens, and understand 1,000 citizens to Israel, then maybe you've already heard this, hopefully you have, is a much bigger number for the United States or a larger country because the percentage of the population. So maybe like 25,000 Americans would be the equivalent or something like that. It's one stat I've heard. So that if that happened, no country would just stand for it. Like, well, that's okay, you know. And even if you felt like your foreign policy wasn't perfect, or you wouldn't excuse the atrocities. You still wouldn't say, well, it's okay. You know, I just, even though it's difficult and complicated, Amakai, one thing I hope is that, especially American Christians and Christians all over the world, at the end of the day have to say, look, there has to be this is one of the situations where you have to end up supporting a side, I think, and really understanding that everything's not equal here. You know, Israel's not going to go over there and just slaughter citizens and aim for civilians like Hamas did. It's not the same. Yes, civilians will die. That's unfortunately what happens. But they're not going to be going after them. They're not going to be torturing them. They're not going to be sending cell phone videos to their family. They're not going to be raping them. If that happens, rogue soldiers, they get in trouble. So I don't know. I mean, you know more about than me. I'm just trying to reiterate this to the audience because I think we're in this for the long haul.
Unfortunately, I believe so as well.
Well, so once you're over there, will I ever will we be able to have any kind of contact? Or I mean, I just kind of wait for you to call me again, or what?
Yeah, I believe so. I'm not sure what's gonna happen, to be honest. Most of my friends that have made this journey already, the ones that were staying in New York, it's been difficult to get in touch with them. It's, you hear something every few days.
Wow. Well, I commend you for your bravery, Amakai, dropping, what you've got going on here in the States, going all the way to Israel when you weren't even called or required to do the right thing. I do see that as an example of loving your neighbor as yourself. Myself and everyone watching, we do pray for your safety and that God gives you supernatural decision making and an ability to be protected. We pray that for everybody, but we know you, so that's what we say for you. And just trust and hope and pray that you will be a man of peace and a man of defending the weak and the vulnerable, and that mission will be accomplished sooner rather than later. And I do pray you're able to come back and we can have an interview and talk and discuss some serious matters together. And we'll pray for you when we go off air as well. Any final words, my friend?
I guess, I really appreciate everybody that's part of this program. You've got a great community in here. And, just pray for all of Am Yisrael. I mean, we're really going to need it. And just remember, this isn't just something that you watch on the news and, you pick a side. And this isn't sports teams. This is, people's families, their lives. Families are being destroyed. We have to remember one side is representing humanity and morality, and the other side is terrorists. We can't as Western people excuse terrorism. So I would just like, if anybody is on social media and you're coming across anything that's in support of the terrorist action, that you will say something or, do something. Don't let this be something that is a debated topic. Terrorism cannot be debated.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's true. That's the time for that is past. It's over, and it's in a different stage right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll do my best to be in contact, and hopefully, Vizvat Hashem will do our other interview. And maybe one last thing, for Black Hebrew Israelites, the extremes, that you want to go dress up as Jews as costume and whatever. This is the real reality of what it is to be a Jew. Even Jews in America, Jews around the world are feeling what's going on in Israel. And they're also going... One second.
Facts.
They'll also be experiencing hate, because the top leader of Hamas, he called for an international day of jihad and is recommending people to attack Jews, abroad. So, I mean, this is something that can happen in any neighborhood.
Yeah.
But, I think these guys, they really need to realize and take a long, hard look at themselves. These people committing these atrocities, they're not coming for you. You may think that, well, I don't know. Maybe you want to tell them you're the real Jews, but you don't want to be a part of what they're doing to us. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And, like the chat says, as they do these things, they'll shout Allahu Akbar, saying God is greater. But yeah, a lot of support for you in the live chat. And I know afterwards when people see this as well, they will as well. And so thank you very much. We do wish for your safe return in Jesus' name. God bless. Peace out. Much love. Shalom. See you all tomorrow.